Hello everyone, this video is going to be all about writing, and I just want to encourage you to incorporate writing however you can. Some kids really love to write and some kids really hate to write, but it's a really important skill. I believe handwriting is kind of something that falls by the wayside, unfortunately, in school, just because it's kind of one of those things that's not like a pressing, like you have to get your reading, you have to get your math done. Some schools are really great about enforcing social studies and science, but writing is something that I just feel like gets left behind. And even in the homeschool world, it's just one of those things that doesn't happen often sometimes if you're not very intentional about it. So, and reading for that matter too, if your child isn't a reader, figure out what they like. Maybe they like looking at magazines. There's all kinds of subscription programs that you can get where they get magazines every few weeks or every month. They can look at comics, anything where they're engaging with some kind of literature in front of them is a win. Okay, it does not have to be a chapter book. It doesn't have to be the little Bob readers where they're following along. Yes, those are important and they have a place, but if they are not enjoying reading and you forcing them to read a book, is not going to be beneficial for anyone. It's just going to bring everybody down. So wherever you can sneak writing in and reading, I always encourage you to do that. Whether it's writing a note to a friend, my daughter is learning how to type, so we are working towards being able to send an email to someone that she has typed. That's a fun little activity, working on a life skill of typing and being able to keep in touch with a friend back home. You can actually write letters and cards. How different is that to get a handwritten card in the mail? It's so rare now. Most people just send a text or an email. So getting a card in the mail is super special, and it's nice to teach your children that that's what you do. Like when you get a present, it's nice to write a thank you note, a handwritten thank you note, and mail it out, snail mail, because it's just nice to have that card come in the mail, the thought that was put behind it in advance for you. Within your curriculum, depending on what curriculum you're using, there may be little snippets of writing dispersed throughout, or maybe there's not writing at all and you have to do all of it. Just kind of look through a little bit, kind of plan ahead, maybe get some ideas of how you could sneak some writing in. One of the things that the curriculum I use does that I really love, it's prepping her for writing an essay, which is very overwhelming to some people and children to think of all the words that you have to come up with. They have her come up with a introduction paragraph and a closing paragraph, and then she just reads and cuts out the three body paragraphs and pastes them in a specific order. So she's practicing organizing her thoughts and coming up with those two paragraphs on her own with some guidance, and then the other three, like really meaty ones, she just places in a certain order, and it just helps to bring that cohesiveness of the essay together without requiring her to fully come up with all those words and all those sentences, but she's still able to practice putting it all together, if that makes sense. So long-term goal, yes, she's going to eventually write an essay all by herself, but as far as the short-term goal, she's just starting to see how all of these paragraphs fit together and how you can organize your thoughts in a logical and orderly way that makes sense to the reader and also gets a certain point across. So we've done a couple different countries where it talks about like the population and the geographical features and maybe some of the history of that culture or location. And it's just really nice to see it all come together with pieces of her paragraphs in there as well. They could also create a comic. My daughter's really into comics right now. You can find all kinds of templates online, or they can just draw their own and make up their creative little story to go along with it. So you're having writing and storytelling and even illustrating if they want to do that, but that's a fun thing to do. You could also have them use like a journal or a diary. I know we keep a little spiral notebook in the car when we're traveling. If my daughter sees something that she wants to write about, she jots down a little note, and I always try to encourage her to write the date so she knows when it happened, and it'll be fun to look back on. Those of you that like to do the diary thing, you could have a little diary for your children and they could write it. I've even seen parents that will have like a notebook that they pass back and forth, which is awesome when your kids are older and things become a little awkward and maybe they don't want to say something to their mom, but they do have a question and it's just easier to write it down. It's not as embarrassing to write it down, and it's kind of like a back and forth journal that you write to each other to still communicate and still connect, just giving them another option if they're too uncomfortable verbalizing their questions and their thoughts. So I thought that was super cool. I'm gonna put that in the back burner for when she's a little bit older. You could also show them some kind of picture that could be humorous or just beautiful and have them do some kind of creative writing around that. I know some pictures are pretty hilarious and you kind of create your own little backstory of what happened. That would be a fun activity to do with them. So some kind of writing piece that is inspired by this silly or funny picture that you find, or even a video. And then you could also work on poems and acronyms. Those are super fun. Poems don't seem to be as intimidating because they can be short and sweet, and they don't always have to rhyme, even though that's cutesy. And then acronyms are when you write the letter of a word going down, and then the first letter of the first word starts with whatever that letter is that you wrote down. Wow, I hope that made sense. So I described it. So you would write like fall, F-A-L-L, and then you'd think of a word or a phrase that starts with F, and then the next one would start with A, and then you have two that started with L. So you could make a poem like that. A little bit more guidance if they're stuck. They have to figure out a letter, assigned letter to go with that line. So those are just a few ideas that I had to go with writing. Again, wherever you can squeeze it in is going to benefit. I even have my daughter working on cursive, so if we are in the car for a little bit, I'll throw some cursive in the back seat and have her work on her copy work with cursive. And you can even do like dry erase if your kids like to do the dry erase board. You can get little tiny like personal dry erase boards. They're pretty affordable. Or you can even get like those shop ticket things that you slide the paper in, or like a page protector, and they can just write on that. And sometimes it's fun to write on dry erase boards, just something different. They can practice their spelling on there, they can practice different sentences, they can practice cursive. There's lots of opportunities to incorporate writing in your day. If you have an idea that I didn't say, I'd love for you to drop it in the comments and share and grow and learn from each other.